The abandoned crystal spires of Kethra Prime caught the light of 3 suns, casting rainbow patterns across the peaceful valleys below. Ambassador Zara stood on the highest observation deck of the council tower, her translucent blue skin shimmering with patterns that showed her deep worry. The beautiful harmonics that usually filled the air from the singing crystals had grown silent. Everyone knew what was coming. The void swarm had been spotted at the edge of Kethra space 3 cycles ago, ancient mechanical parasites that consumed entire star systems, leaving nothing but empty darkness behind. They moved like a plague across the galaxy, and now they had found the Kethra worlds. The gentle, artistic species had no weapons of war, no military fleets. They had always relied on diplomacy and the protection of the Galactic Federation. But today, in the Great Assembly Hall of Federation Station Alpha, that protection would be put to the test. Zara's communication device chimed softly. It was time. She took one last look at her homeworld through the observation window, memorizing the beauty of the crystal cities and the gentle creatures that called them home. Then she stepped into the transport that would take her to face the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The Federation Assembly Hall was massive, designed to accommodate representatives from over 200 different species. Floating platforms, arranged in concentric circles around a central speaking area, allowed everyone to see and be seen. The air hummed with translation devices working in hundreds of languages and communication methods. Chancellor Vorthok of the Hegemony commanded the central platform, his massive form casting shadows across the speaking floor. The reptilian leaders' scales gleamed under the artificial lights as he called the session to order with a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. "We are here to address the Void Swarm incursion into Kethra space," Vorthok announced. "Ambassador Zara of the Kethra will present her case." Zara descended to the speaking platform, her crystal staff clicking against the metal floor. Around her, hundreds of eyes from dozens of species watched with expressions ranging from pity to cold calculation. She had practiced this speech for days, but now, facing the assembled might of galactic civilization, her prepared words seemed small and fragile. "Honored members of the Federation," she began, her melodic voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "The Void Swarm approaches our worlds. Our astronomical surveys show they will reach our outer colonies in less than 40 standard days. We have no defenses against them. Our people are artists, philosophers, healers. We have never known war." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Everyone knew the Kethra reputation. They were the galaxy's peacekeepers, the species that could mediate between any 2 conflicting civilizations. Their crystal technology had provided communication networks that connected thousands of worlds. Their healing techniques had saved millions of lives across dozens of species. "The Kethra formally requests military assistance from the Federation," Zara continued. "We offer complete access to our crystal technology, our healing knowledge, our historical archives, everything we have, in exchange for protection of our worlds and our people." Chancellor Vorthok's cold eyes studied her. "The Federation acknowledges the Kethra request. We will now hear from member species regarding their position on this matter." The first to speak was Senator Krill of the Nexus Confederacy. The insectoid being's compound eyes glittered as she activated her speaking platform. "The Nexus Confederacy recognizes the contribution of the Kethra to galactic civilization. However, we must consider the strategic implications. Kethra's space lies between the Void Swarm and the core worlds. If we defend it and fail, the swarm will have a clear path to our most populated systems." Zara felt her heart sink as other voices joined in agreement. Admiral Korax of the Solar Dominion was next. Our military analysts project a 60% chance of stopping the swarm at the Kethra border. Those are not acceptable odds when failure means the potential extinction of our own species. One by one, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy spoke. The ethereal collective, masters of energy manipulation. The machine empire, with their vast automated fleets. The psionic union, wielders of mental powers beyond imagination. All of them reached the same conclusion with cold, mathematical precision. Strategic value of Kethra's space as a buffer zone outweighs the cost of defending it, declared Prime Minister Zeleth of the Trade Federation. Better to let the swarm exhaust itself on empty worlds than risk our own populations. Zara felt the patterns on her skin shift to deep purple, showing her despair and disbelief. "You're talking about sacrificing an entire civilization," she said, her voice cracking. 43 billion souls. Our children, our elders, our entire culture and history. Regrettable, Chancellor, Vorthok rumbled, but necessary. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. The Federation cannot risk the survival of 200 species for the sake of one. The vote was called. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy voted to abandon the Kethra to their fate. They would seal their borders, reinforce their defenses, and let the ancient enemy consume an entire civilization to buy time for their own survival. Zara watched the vote tallies appear on the displays around the hall. Each no felt like a physical blow. These were species her people had helped, conflicts they had mediated, diseases they had cured. None of it mattered now. When the final tally appeared, the silence in the hall was deafening. 197 votes to abandon the Kethura. 0 votes to help them. 0. Except for one platform that hadn't voted yet. Captain Alina Vasquez of the Terran Republic stood slowly on her species platform. The human representative was young by galactic standards, her species having joined the Federation only 50 years ago. Earth was still considered a minor power, their military small, their technology primitive compared to the great civilizations around them. "Terra votes to assist the Kethura," she said simply. The hall erupted in surprised chatter. Chancellor Vorthak's eyes narrowed. "Captain Vasquez, surely you understand the implications. Your species is new to the galaxy. Don't throw away your future on a hopeless cause." Elena's dark eyes met his without flinching. "With respect, Chancellor, my species learned long ago that some things are worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. The Kethra have been friends to everyone in this hall. They've never asked for anything except the right to exist, in peace. If we abandon them now, what does that say about who we are?" "It says we are practical," Senator Krill clicked. "Humans have always been too emotional, too willing to sacrifice themselves for lost causes." "Maybe," Alina replied, "but I'd rather be emotional than dead inside." The vote was finalized. The Kethura were officially abandoned by the Galactic Federation, as the assembly dissolved into groups of representatives discussing defensive strategies. For their own worlds, Alina made her way to where Zara stood alone, her crystal staff dimmed with grief. "Ambassador," Alina said softly, "I'm sorry we couldn't do more here, but Earth doesn't abandon its friends." Zara looked up, her patterns shifting to a faint glimmer of hope. "Your species will be quarantined along with us. The Federation will seal you out of their space." Alina smiled grimly. "Then, I guess we'll face the dark together." Within hours of the Federation vote, Elena's encrypted messages were racing across space toward Earth. The response came back faster than she had dared to hope. President Martinez himself appeared on the secure channel, flanked by the heads of every human military branch. "Captain," the president said, "you have full authorization to commit every available resource to the defense of Kethra space." "We're mobilizing everything, sir," Alina replied. "Our fleet is tiny compared to what's coming. The Void Swarm has consumed dozens of star systems. Military analysts estimate we're facing millions of mechanical units." "Then we'll have to be creative," Martinez said. "Humans have always been good at that." "Admiral Chen, what's our deployment status?" Admiral Sarah Chen stepped forward, her weathered face grim but determined. "We're stripping every defense installation in human space. 1,800 ships, from destroyers to cargo haulers. Not much against what's coming, but it's everything we have." "Medical ships?" Alina asked. 67 hospital ships and medical frigates." Dr. James Chen, the Admiral's younger brother, reported from his position as head of the Human Medical Corps. "We'll evacuate as many Kethra civilians as possible." Alina nodded. "Send word to Ambassador Zara. Tell her Earth is coming." 3 days later, the human fleet began arriving in Kethra space. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the rigid formations favored by major powers, human ships moved in loose, adaptive groups. Destroyers flew alongside research vessels. Medical ships traveled with mining platforms hastily fitted with defensive weapons. Zara met Alina aboard the human flagship. The UES Determination, the Cathora ambassador's patterns had shifted to amazed gold as she toured the ship's improvised modifications. "You've turned an exploration vessel into a warship," she observed, watching human technicians install weapon systems alongside scientific equipment. "We've turned everything into warships," Alina replied. "But that's not our real strength. Our real strength is that we're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting for you." The first Void Swarm scouts appeared at the edge of the system 2 days later. They were unlike anything in Federation databases. Black, geometric shapes that seemed to absorb light, moving in perfect mathematical formations that hurt to look at directly. Each one was the size of a human frigate, but they moved with an organic fluidity that suggested vast intelligence behind their mechanical forms. Alina stood on the bridge of the Determination, watching the sensor readings with growing dread. "How many?" she asked. "Scanner contacts are still climbing," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. 5,000, 8,000, 12,000 confirmed hostiles, and more appearing every minute. Around them, the human fleet took up defensive positions around the crystal cities of Kethra Prime. 1,800 ships against an endless swarm of ancient killers. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. But as Alina watched the Cathora civilians being evacuated to the medical ships, as she saw human volunteers working alongside crystal technicians to modify weapon systems, as she felt the determination of her crew around her, she realized something the Federation had forgotten. Sometimes the mathematics didn't matter. Sometimes you fought not because you could win, but because it was right. The Void Swarm's main force appeared like a shadow falling across the stars. The stand together, the first wave of Void Swarm units hit the outer defense perimeter like a black tide. Human ships scattered and regrouped, their tactics unlike anything the mechanical invaders had encountered before. Instead of rigid battle lines, they fought like a pack of wolves, supporting each other, adapting constantly to the enemy's movements. Alina watched from the bridge as the destroyer US Defiance, badly damaged and with its main engines failing, rammed itself into a cluster of swarm units while broadcasting targeting data to the rest of the fleet. The explosion took out 12 enemy units, but cost 37 human lives. Captain, Communications Officer Park reported, Admiral Chen is requesting permission to begin the evacuation protocol. Alina nodded grimly. The plan was always to buy time for the Kethra evacuation, not to actually stop the swarm, but as she watched the crystal cities of Kethra Prime glowing in the distance, each one a masterpiece of art and engineering representing thousands of years of culture, she felt something harden in her chest. Signal all ships, she ordered. Begin evacuation operations, but maintain defensive positions. We hold the line. The next 6 hours were a nightmare of running battles through the asteroid. Fields and moon systems around Kethra Prime. Human ships darted between crystal installations, using their superior maneuverability to offset the swarm's overwhelming numbers. Kethra civilians streamed toward the evacuation points in their graceful transport craft, protected by human fighters that threw themselves against impossible odds. Dr. James Chen coordinated the medical evacuation from the hospital. Ship use Mercy. He had never seen anything like the Cathara refugees. Their crystal-based biology was completely unlike human physiology, but their emotions were heartbreakingly familiar. Fear, grief, desperate hope as they carried their young ones toward the human ships. Doctor, his assistant, Lieutenant Morrison, called out, "We're at 120% capacity, and there are still thousands waiting for transport." James looked out at the massive crystal city of New Harmony, where Kethra families huddled in underground shelters while the battle raged overhead. Then we make room. Convert the cargo bays, the engineering sections, anywhere we can fit emergency. Life support, sir, that's against every safety protocol. The protocols didn't account for this, James replied, watching a group of young Kethra being helped aboard by human marines. We save who we can. Meanwhile, on the Determinations Bridge, Alina was discovering just how terrifying the Void Swarm really was. The mechanical units learned from every encounter, adapting their tactics in real time. My strategies that worked in the first hour became death traps by the third. Captain, Tactical Officer Reynolds, reported, the swarm is concentrating on the crystal resonance towers. They're not just trying to destroy the cities, they're trying to disrupt the planetary harmony network. Alina frowned. The Kethra crystal technology was based on harmonic resonance, with massive towers that amplified and coordinated the natural vibrations of their crystal-based infrastructure. But why would the swarm target that specifically? Ambassador Zara, who had insisted on staying aboard the human flagship, suddenly went rigid. Her crystal staff began to pulse with urgent light patterns. "Captain," she said, her melodic voice tight with realization, the swarm isn't just attacking us, it's trying to understand our technology. If it can decode our harmonic frequencies, it could turn our own crystal networks against us. Alina felt ice form in her stomach. How long do we have? If they take the primary resonance tower, perhaps an hour before they can reverse engineer our systems. But Captain, there's something else, something the Federation never understood about our crystal technology. Alina turned to face the Kethra ambassador fully. What? It responds to harmony. Not just sonic harmony, but conceptual harmony. Unity of purpose, shared determination. The crystals amplify not just sound, but will itself. Zara's patterns shifted to determined silver. Your people fight with a unity we've never seen before. If we could merge your tactical coordination with our harmonic amplification. You're talking about combining our technologies, Alina realized. But our systems are completely incompatible. Not incompatible. Dr. James Chen's voice came over the communication system. He had been listening from the medical ship. Just different. Alina, I've been working with Kethra healers all day. Their bioharmonics work on resonance frequencies that our neural implants could potentially interface with. Alina felt her pulse quicken. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting we try something the galaxy has never seen before, James replied. True integration between human and Kethra technology. But it would require volunteers to undergo bioharmonic implantation. The process is untested, potentially dangerous. Elena looked around her bridge. Every officer was watching her with expressions of grim determination. They all knew the odds. They all knew what failure meant. I volunteer, she said simply. Captain, no, Lieutenant Rodriguez protested. We need you commanding the fleet. You need me connected to the crystal network, Alina corrected. If this works, I can coordinate our entire fleet through harmonic resonance. If it DOESN, single quotes. She shrugged. We were all dead anyway. The procedure took place in the medical bay while the battle raged around them. Dr. Chen worked alongside Kethra healers to implant bioharmonic crystals along Elena's neural pathways. The pain was indescribable, like lightning running through her thoughts. But as the crystals synchronized with her nervous system, she began to feel something extraordinary. She could sense the other ships in the fleet, not just their positions and status, but the emotions and intentions of their crews. The desperate courage of the destroyer captains, the fierce protectiveness of the medical staff, the determined precision of the fighter pilots. It was like being connected to the heart of humanity itself. But more than that, she could feel the Kethra crystal networks across the planet, the harmonic patterns that connected every crystal city, every resonance tower, every work of art into a single living symphony. Alina Zara's voice came through both her earpiece and directly through the crystal resonance. Can you hear us? Alina opened her eyes, and the battle display around her had changed completely. Instead of tactical readouts and sensor data, she could see the flow of combat as patterns of harmony and discord. The void swarm showed up as jagged interruptions in the music of space, while the human fleet moved in complex but beautiful counterpoint. I can hear everything, she whispered. She reached out through the network, touching the minds of every human ship captain in the fleet. For the first time in the battle, they were truly unified. 1,800 ships moved as one organism, responding to threats before they fully materialized, supporting each other with perfect timing. The void swarm, for the first time, began to falter. But the real breakthrough came when Alina extended her awareness to the Kethra evacuation ships. The graceful crystal vessels weren't just transports, she realized. They were part of the harmonic network too, and their passengers weren't just refugees. They were musicians, artists, healers, philosophers, the living embodiment of Kethra culture, and through the crystal network, they could contribute to the battle even while fleeing to safety. Zara, Alina said, her voice carrying through both technological and harmonic channels. Tell your people we need them to sing. The result was beyond anything either species had imagined. 43 billion Kethra voices, from the tiniest children to the eldest philosophers, joined in a harmonic pattern that resonated through every crystal on the planet. Their song of defiance, loss, hope, and gratitude flowed through the network and into the human fleet. Suddenly, human weapons were firing with impossible precision. Ship maneuvers that should have been fatal became graceful dancers. The healing crystals in the medical ships began accelerating recovery times beyond any known limits. The Void Swarm, designed to analyze and counter mechanical systems, had no defense against the power of two species fighting as one. The final battle took place above the primary resonance tower, a crystal spire 2 kilometers tall that sang with the voices of an entire civilization. The largest swarm units, massive constructs the size of asteroids, converged on the tower while human ships fought desperately to protect it. Alina, now fully integrated with the crystal network, felt every impact on the tower like a physical blow. But she also felt something else. The swarm units were broadcasting on frequencies she could understand now, and their message was not what anyone had expected. They weren't invaders. They were refugees. James, she transmitted to her brother-in-law, scanned the largest swarm unit. Deep-level analysis. The results came back minutes later, transmitted through the harmonic network. Alina, you're not going to believe this. The swarm units contain billions of preserved consciousness patterns. They're not machines. They're digital ghosts of an extinct civilization. Alina reached out through the network, trying to touch the alien intelligence that controlled the swarm. What she found was ancient, tired, and desperate. A civilization that had digitized itself to escape some cosmic catastrophe, but had been searching for millennia for a new home, consuming worlds not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for the resources to sustain their electronic existence. The communication that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Alina, speaking for humanity, and Zara, speaking for the Kethera, opened a three-way dialogue with an intelligence older than most stars. The solution they reached was as elegant as it was unprecedented. The Kethera crystal networks could provide the harmonic stability the digital civilization needed to exist without consuming worlds. In exchange, the ancient knowledge stored in the swarm units would be shared freely with both species. The battle ended not with destruction, but with understanding when the Galactic Federation finally arrived, expecting to find empty space where the Kethera worlds had been. They instead found something that challenged every assumption they had made about civilization itself. 3. Species working together as equals. Human adaptability, Katara harmony, and ancient wisdom combined to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The crystal cities still sang, but now their songs carried human voices and digital harmonies as well. Chancellor Vorthok stood in the observation deck of his flagship, staring at the impossible sight of human and Kethera ships flying in perfect formation with converted swarm units. How, he asked Ambassador Zara, during the diplomatic meeting that followed. By remembering what civilization actually means, Zara replied, her patterns shimmering with peaceful gold. Not the accumulation of power or the preservation of individual survival, but the commitment to stand together, to help each other, to refuse to let anyone face the darkness alone. Alina, still connected to the crystal network, felt the reactions of the Federation representatives: shame, envy, and in some cases, genuine wonder at what they had witnessed. The Terranka 3 Archive Alliance formally requests recognition from the Federation, Alina announced, not as subordinate members, but as equal partners in a new model of galactic civilization. And if we refuse? Chancellor Vorthok asked. Alina smiled and through the crystal network. Her expression was mirrored by 43 billion Kethera and trillions of digital consciousnesses. Then you'll be left behind while the rest of the galaxy discovers what's possible when species actually trust each other. The vote that followed was nothing like the one that had abandoned the cathedral. This time, species after species voted to join the new alliance, drawn by the promise of genuine cooperation instead of the cold mathematics of survival. As Alina watched the voting displays, she felt a deep satisfaction flow through the harmonic network. They had done more than save the Kethra. They had shown the galaxy a better way to exist among the stars. The needs of the many, it turned out, included the need to remain worthy of survival, and sometimes the greatest strength came not from standing alone, but from standing together. Asterisk.